In a quiet Buddhist temple, a Japanese monk kneels before a wooden altar with his eyes closed, breathing the slow breath of a peaceful man, a holy man, a man honored by the Cambodian government as one of the country's greatest philanthropists. But beneath the ropes, the shadow of a ruthless Yakuza who once drove a truck through the wall of a rival gang's headquarters during a war that killed 29 people across Japan. A crime boss who controlled over 1,000 gangsters and 100 front companies worth more than $1 billion. His men held down one of Japan's most celebrated filmmakers outside his own home and slashed his face open with knives. He conned the FBI into giving him a liver transplant. The Americans called him the John Gotti of Japan. His name was Tadamasa Goto, the man who wrote, directed and starred in his own story, from the opening scene to the final chapter, literally. When I started laying this case out, I ran out of board space. Goto lived 6 lives, and every single one of them would be remarkable on its own. The thug, a boy raised in wartime poverty who fought his way into Japan's most powerful criminal organization. The boss, a man who built $1 billion empire across construction, real estate, entertainment, and finance. The enforcer, a shadow hand behind one of Japan's most influential religious and political organizations, silencing critics and intimidating journalists. The killer, the man whose name is whispered around the death of a filmmaker, a real estate consultant, and according to one Japanese police officer, as many as 17 people. The Khan, a dying man who talked his way past the FBI, past the American medical system, and past 80 people on a transplant waiting list. And the final act, a monk in robes, donating to charity, building schools, a peaceful and holy figure. 6 pieces of the same man, a man with many faces. To understand him, we start at the beginning, a young thug with nothing, who wanted everything. In the shadow of Mount Fuji in Shizuoka Prefecture sits a small city called Fujinomiya, the kind of quiet, unremarkable place where people live simple lives. A motherless teenager, Goto became what the Japanese call a chinpira, a low-level street thug, the kind of young man who runs errands for people he shouldn't know and settles arguments with his fists, because he has nothing else to settle them with. He was the youngest of 4, post-war Japan, no guidance. This was the only natural path for him to gravitate to. He simply drifted toward the only people in his world who had any real power, and made himself useful. His Yakuza career officially began in 1972 when he joined a small affiliate of the Yamaguchi-gumi, Japan's largest and most powerful crime syndicate, with close to 40,000 members at its peak. The Yamaguchi-gumi operates less like a street gang and more like a corporate franchise. Local bosses run their own territories, pay dues up the chain every month, and in return they get the protection of the most feared brand in Japanese organized crime. There are business cards, office buildings, fan magazines, even a website with a poetry page. The headquarters address in Kobe is publicly listed on the National Police Agency's own website. During Halloween, they open the compound and hand out candy to neighborhood children. This is the organization Goto entered, 3 levels removed from the top, in a small affiliate based in Fujinomiya, about as far from the center of power as you can be, while still technically being inside the machine, like a third cousin that doesn't get invited to the family Christmas party. But, you've guessed it, Goto doesn't stay there. He rose fast, and by 1985 he had done something that most Yakuza never even attempt. He formed his own group. The Goto-gumi, named after himself, operating as a direct secondary affiliate of the Yamaguchi-gumi. He had his own soldiers and expanded his territory. But territory in Fujinomiya is a ceiling, not a launch pad. To get where Goto wanted to go, he needed the kind of moment that rewrites how people say your name. In 1984, Goto had an opening. The Yama-ichi War. A succession dispute at the top split the organization in half, and a breakaway faction called the Ichiwakai declared open war on the parent group, Yamaguchi-gumi. What followed was 5 years of shootings, stabbings, and firebombings that stretched across Japan and claimed 29 lives. Most Yakuza in this war had a degree of calculation, strategic hits, targeted intimidation, the kind of measured violence practiced by men who understood that prison, or even death, was a real possibility with every move they made. For a young boss trying to prove himself, Goto's answer was to drive a truck directly through the wall of an opposing group's property. You may think this is silly, but it proved something far more powerful for the Yakuza. This man doesn't fear death. This man isn't afraid of prison. This man is a dangerous weapon that is willing to risk his life on the line for a cause. The Yamaguchi-gumi noticed. Goto was credited with helping the organization plant its flag in the Kanto region, Tokyo and the surrounding area. the most valuable territory in the country. He was appointed secretary to the fifth godfather, Yoshinori Watanabe himself. He quit about a year later. The desk work didn't suit his personality. However, the war had given him something more valuable than a title he didn't want. In 1991, Goto moved the Goto-Gumi's operations east by merging with a gang in Hachioji on the western edge of Tokyo. And from there, he established a permanent foothold in the Kanto region, the economic heart of Japan. The Goto-Gumi became the Yamaguchi-Gumi's vanguard in Tokyo, and Goto became the most powerful crime boss in the capital. At his peak, the Goto-Gumi had roughly 1,000 members and over 100 front companies operating across Tokyo. These include various legitimate businesses such as a talent agency, a film production company, a hedge fund, a hotel, a restaurant, an art dealership. In 1990, he made headlines by becoming Japan Airlines' largest individual shareholder. Stock exchange filings later disputed the claim, but the fact that it was even plausible tells you everything about how far he had reached. And then there was entertainment. The Goto-Gumi held a lock on Burning Productions, Japan's most powerful talent agency, the company that controlled access to the country's biggest actors, singers, and celebrities. That single relationship gave Goto leverage over the media itself. Any news outlet that covered him too closely risked losing access to every major entertainer in Japan. It was protection built out of business relationships rather than brutality. And it worked so well that when he later published an autobiography confessing to extraordinary things, the press barely even attempted to make any of it mainstream. He threw lavish birthday parties where some of Japan's most famous actors, singers, and entertainers showed up to pay their respects. Not because they were invited, because they understood what it meant not to show up. An empire the size of Goto's doesn't exist in isolation. It attracts powerful friends, the kind of friends who have problems they can't solve publicly and who are willing to pay a fortune for someone who can solve them quietly. Soka Gakkai is one of the largest religious organizations in Japan, with over 12 million members worldwide, and the financial and political backer of the Komeito Party, which has sat in Japan's ruling coalition for decades. In his own best-selling autobiography, Goto openly admitted to doing enforcement work on their behalf, silencing critics, intimidating journalists, making problems disappear for an organization that could never be seen making those problems disappear itself. But the enforcement work wasn't always political. Sometimes it was personal, and sometimes it was permanent. A real estate consultant named Kazuoki Nozaki tried to evict Goto-Gumi members from a building valued at $20 million. In 2006, Nozaki was stabbed to death on a Tokyo street. Police spent 5 years building a case, but the only witness who could connect the killing directly to Goto, a former lieutenant named Takashi Kondo, was gunned down in Thailand in 2011. According to one Japanese police officer, Goto is suspected of being connected to as many as 17 deaths. Most of those cases went the same way: thin evidence, missing witnesses, prosecutors who decided the risk wasn't worth it. And then there was Juzo Itami. Itami was one of Japan's most celebrated filmmakers, a director known for sharp, fearless satires that turned a lens on the parts of Japanese society that preferred not to be looked at. In 1992, he released a film called Minbo no Onna, a comedy that portrayed the Yakuza not as fearsome warriors or honorable outlaws, but as pathetic, cowardly bullies who crumbled the moment anyone stood up to them. The film was a hit. The Yakuza were not amused. 6 days after the film's release, 5 members of the Goto-Gumi attacked Itami outside his home. They held him down and slashed his face with knives, not in a frenzy, but very slowly and deliberately, the way you sign your name on something you want people to remember. Itami survived and told the New York Times,
"They cut very slowly. They took their time. They could have killed me if they wanted."
Any sensible man would have walked away from Goto and never looked back. But Itami was not a sensible man. He was a passionate one. He kept making films, and by 1997, he was working on something new. A project that would explore the relationship between the Goto-Gumi and Soka Gakkai. This is the one topic that no media outlet or law enforcers dare to touch in Japan. And this man, Itami, bravely wants to pursue. On December 20th, 1997, Juzo Itami was found dead on the pavement below his office building. He was 64 years old. The official ruling was suicide, attributed to a tabloid that was about to publish a story about him cheating on his wife. Itami had previously written a published essay in which he argued that affairs are simply part of Japanese culture, not something worth agonizing over. This is not a man whose known views suggest he would take his own life over a tabloid story about one. Years later, a former member of the Goto-gumi told journalist Jake Adelstein what he says happened on that rooftop.
I made a film. That's all I did. I made a film.
You made a mistake.
You think killing me stops anything? There will be other films, other directors.
Maybe, but not you.
You have two options. You jump, maybe you survive the fall. Or you stay and we pull this trigger. Your face goes first.
Itami jumped. He didn't survive. This has never been proven. The official ruling remains suicide. But the film Itami was working on about Goto and Soka Gakkai was never completed, and no one has attempted to make it since. By the late 1990s, Goto's liver was failing. Decades of excess had caught up with him, and without a transplant he was going to die. There was just one problem. The best transplant surgeons in the world were in the United States, and Goto was banned from entering the country because of his criminal record. He turned the problem into a negotiation. Goto reached out to the FBI with an offer. He would become an informant, providing intelligence on Yamaguchi-gumi operations in America, drug trafficking, money laundering, weapons networks, in exchange for a special visa that would allow him to enter the United States for a liver transplant at UCLA Medical Center in Los Angeles. This is a historic opportunity for the intelligence officer. One of Japan's most powerful Yakuza boss is volunteering to break the code of silence and hand over the inner workings of a criminal empire with tens of thousands of members. So of course the Bureau agreed, and Goto flew to Los Angeles in 2001. He donated $100,000 to UCLA, enough to earn himself a commemorative plaque that read, "In grateful recognition of the Goto Research Fund established through the generosity of Mr. Tadamasa Goto, he received a liver in 6 weeks from a young man who had died in a traffic accident." That same year, 186 people in the Los Angeles area died waiting for one. The hospital later conducted an internal review, and Dr. Ronald Busuttil, the surgeon who performed Goto's transplant, continued treating him for years afterward, even flying to Japan to examine him while Goto was in police custody on fraud charges in 2006. A world-renowned American surgeon making house calls to a jailed Yakuza boss. And what did the FBI get in return? Goto handed them a few front company names and a tip about a loan shark named Susumu Kajiyama. Scraps. Maybe a tenth of what he promised, just enough to technically say he cooperated, not nearly enough to justify what the FBI had given him in return. The FBI couldn't exactly hold him hostage at the hospital or deny him exit. He had a legal visa. Goto flew home and resumed his life like he had just came back from a vacation. But the deal didn't stay buried. An American journalist named Jake Adelstein had been investigating Goto for years. Adelstein broke the story of the FBI transplant deal, and in doing so became the first journalist to put Goto's name and the FBI's name in the same sentence in print. Goto's response was not subtle.
Erase the article, or we will erase something. And I believe you have a family that exists, yes?
Goto had silenced filmmakers. He had silenced the press. He had silenced witnesses. But he couldn't silence Adelstein, and the exposure of the FBI deal set off a chain of events that would cost him everything he had built. Adelstein's reporting accomplished what decades of law enforcement and gang warfare never could. It embarrassed the Yamaguchi-gumi. The FBI deal becoming public was a violation of the most fundamental rule in the Yakuza. You do not cooperate with law enforcement. Goto had sat down with the Americans, traded on the Yamaguchi-gumi name to save his own skin. Then came the birthday party. A weekly magazine published a story about one of Goto's lavish celebrations, naming 5 of Japan's most famous enka singers as guests. For the Yamaguchi-gumi's ruling faction, led by Kiyoshi Takayama of the Kodokai, it was the final humiliation. Goto was a spotlight that shined too dangerously, and the organization had spent decades operating in the space under the shadows. Goto had dragged them into the light. In October 2008, the Yamaguchi-gumi officially expelled Tadamasa Goto from the Yakuza. 1,000 men, 100 front companies, $1 billion empire, all turned to ash when the sun rose too high for the shadows to hold. But as one light burned down his empire, a new one has shined on him, one that would lead him straight to a temple. He walked into a Tendai sect temple in Kanagawa Prefecture and became a Buddhist monk, taking the holy name Chue. In 2010, he published his autobiography Habakarinagara, roughly translated as With All Due Respect. It became the #1 bestseller in Japan, selling over 225,000 copies. Every yen of the royalties was donated to charity, to the Angkor Association for the Disabled in Cambodia, and to Buddhist temples in Myanmar. He moved to Cambodia in 2011, where he ran a chicken farm, built schools for children, and donated so generously that the Cambodian government granted him the title of Okna, an honorific reserved for the country's most significant philanthropists. But little do you know, Tadamasa Goto's story does not end here. In December 2015, the US Treasury Department froze Goto's assets and named him as an individual with ongoing Yakuza associations. Their finding was that the monk building schools in Cambodia was simultaneously laundering money and bankrolling the Kobe Yamaguchi-gumi, a splinter faction waging a full-scale Yakuza civil war back in Japan. He was funding a gang war from a chicken farm. Goto eventually returned to Japan around 2016 as his health declined. On February 8, 2026, Tadamasa Goto died of aspiration pneumonia in a Tokyo hospital. He was 83 years old. Tadamasa Goto lived 6 lives and answered for none of them. He bled his way to the top, burned his empire to the ground, and then, in the final act, he was still able to live out his core identity from a holy place. Goto once said,
If I really loved making money, I wouldn't be a Yakuza. Nothing is more unrewarding than being a Yakuza. But I stayed because the Yakuza lifestyle suited me.
He was a Yakuza the day he walked in, and he was a Yakuza the day he died. Everything in between was just a costume.